You find a folded piece of paper tucked behind a dresser drawer, and suddenly the whole room feels like it's holding its breath. It's just paper, it's just ink, but somehow it carries the full weight of a person you spent years loving, and the years since trying not to forget. We talk a lot about closure in this culture, like grief is a door you shut and walk away from. But what happens when grief hands you something new to hold, years after you thought you'd figured out how to carry it? Think about what that moment actually is. Not dramatic in a movie way, but devastating in the quietest, most personal way imaginable. You're probably just looking for a phone charger or an old receipt, and then the universe decides today is the day it rearranges you. Here's the strange irony of a letter like this. It was written for a world that no longer exists by a person who is no longer here, but it lands in your hands at the exact moment your present life needed to hear it. That's not coincidence. That's architecture, the invisible kind that love sometimes builds without telling you. Grief researchers, philosophers, ordinary people who have walked this road, they all say something similar, that the person we lost continues to teach us. Not in a mystical way necessarily, but because they shaped how we see. And a letter like this is just that shaping made visible again. The handwriting alone probably undoes you. Before you even read a word, the loops and slants of someone's handwriting are a fingerprint of their personality, their energy, their particular way of being alive. And seeing it again after so long is like hearing a voice in an empty house. Now here's where it gets philosophically interesting. Do you read it immediately, or do you sit with it closed in your hands for a while? That pause, that held breath before you open it, might be the last moment you ever get to be surprised by someone you loved. And there's something both sacred and terrifying about that. What people rarely talk about is how a discovered letter scrambles your timeline. You start doing this mental math. When did she write this? What was she thinking? Was she happy that day? Was she worried about something? And suddenly, you're not standing in your bedroom anymore. You're standing in every moment you shared at once. There's a concept in psychology called continuing bonds. The idea that healthy grieving isn't about detachment, but about finding a new way to stay connected to someone after they're gone. A letter like this one doesn't reopen the wound so much as it reminds you the wound was never really a wound, it was a door. The misconception most people carry is that finding something like this will break them. What survivors and therapists, and honestly just time itself, keeps showing us is that these moments tend to hold people together more than they pull them apart. Because her words remind you, she knew you, and being known is one of the most stabilizing forces a human being can experience. So what do you do with it practically, emotionally, logistically? You don't have to decide anything right away. You can read it once and put it away. You can read it every year on her birthday. You can frame it or bury it in a drawer again. And none of those choices is wrong, because this is yours and there is no protocol for sacred things. What the letter likely carries, even if you haven't read it yet, even if the words are simple and small, is evidence that she was thinking of you, which means in some version of the story, she is still thinking of you. That's not grief anymore. That's love with a longer reach than either of you planned for. Here's what history and literature and every honest memoir ever written tells us about moments like this. They tend to become the chapter people refer back to, the hinge point between who you were trying to be and who you quietly become. Not because of anything dramatic, but because someone you trusted handed you one more piece of who they were and you were humble enough to receive it. The discipline here, if we can even call it that, is to let the letter be what it is, not what you need it to be. Not a solution to your loneliness or an answer to your grief, but simply her voice, one more time, on a perfectly ordinary and completely extraordinary afternoon. And if you like this, subscribe and check out all our other topics.